Okay, so I thought I'd make a video about my driving experience, learning to drive, driving tests, just because I think it's really, really helpful to hear about other people's experiences. Everyone's experience is really different as well, so hopefully this is helpful to someone. So when I was 17, I got my provisional license solely for like ID purposes, so that I didn't have to take my passport anywhere I needed to prove my age or anything like that. It was just something I could have in my purse for my identity and stuff, proof of address, that sort of thing. My dad, I think, encouraged me to get it. And yeah, I didn't have any real plans of learning. Of course I wanted to learn, but at that point I had zero money. Don't think I'd ever really had a proper job where I was earning enough to even have lessons. And yeah, so I just got it, and my parents obviously weren't going to pay for me because they weren't really that keen on me like learning to drive anyway. It wasn't that important to them. So yeah, so I had my provisional, and then last summer when I was 19, so about maybe 3 and a bit years after or just about 3 years or under after I got my provisional, I just decided to take my theory test out of the blue. So I booked it like a week before I started doing. I got the DVD from eBay. I just got it second hand online, and I started practicing, and I got the app as well that I was kind of using, and I tried to read the highway code online, but like got a little bit tedious, so I kind of didn't. I basically spent the evenings just practicing questions. Hazard perception I thought was a little bit I thought I'd fail that part, because when I was doing the practices online I kept I think I was failing on when I was doing the practice, but then I went to my test, obviously because I'd already booked it, so I had to do it. Did the test, thought the questions bit went well, wasn't quite sure about the hazard perception, and then got my results, and I got 48 out of 50 on the questions, which I was like, yay. And then the pass mark's 43, and then I got 50 out of 75 on the hazard perception, and I'm not sure what the pass mark was actually. Maybe 50 was the pass mark and I got higher, but I think I got 50 and the pass mark was like 40 or something, I don't know. So yeah, I passed that. I was like, cool, done. Went back to uni for the year. So then when it got to, I don't know what it was, but when it got to like Easter time, I was gonna come home for a whole month during Easter this year, and I thought, why not just learn to drive and have my license. So the main thing I wanted was to have my license by this summer, because I wanted to be able to drive on my placements. So I study dietetics, and sometimes you have home visits, and I just didn't want any situation where I had to like rely on other people to come pick me up to go and visit patients, that sort of thing. So I just thought, I want to get my license by summer. I'll try and do it. So I thought, I had some savings that my dad saved for me. It wasn't like a lot of money, but it was enough money to learn to drive. So I phoned my dad and I was like, is it okay with you? Can I use this money? Can I use my savings to learn to drive? And he's like, yeah, sure. And then obviously my mum was like, oh, okay, then fine. Like, she never took me seriously really about it, but I so I looked at driving tests. I wanted to get it all done within 4 weeks. I know, like first lesson to passing my test in 4 weeks. So I had to look at the booking thing, and I realised the tests were quite far away. So at this time it was March, the earliest tests were in May, and I was like, I don't know if I want to do that, because I would have gone back to uni and I'd had to like be coming back home to practice. So I thought, I'll book a test that's in a different, like a further away from my house, so it's kind of still in the same vicinity-ish, but it's pretty far out. So I then booked that. So I started to look for driving instructors that covered both my home and that area, so that I'd be able to have be able to picked up at home but driven to the area to do the practice and the lessons and stuff. So I looked around, and even though my friends gave me a recommendation for a guy that they'd used, I was like, well, he doesn't really cover that area, so I'm going to choose this one, who I've never heard of before. I'm just going to go for it. And so I phoned him, got my lessons booked in, and yeah, so I met him, and we started, so he drove me to a really quiet area because my street's quite busy, really quiet area, and kind of just, we started going. I had 4 hours of like a discount lessons because it's like an introductory offer, and then after that I booked 20 hours, a block booking of 20 hours. So the lessons were £24 an hour, but I got the first 4 hours of £15 each, and then the booking for 20 hours was like 420 or something like that, so it was like £20 saving, which was fine. I did my lessons. After about the 6th lesson, which is 12 hours, I was then allowed to drive from my house, like drive all the time from my house, busier roads and stuff, which I kind of didn't feel amazing about it, but then I thought, what can I do? I'm not gonna force him to let me drive on the busier roads. Maybe I'm just not ready. So that was like 12 hours in, which is already halfway through my driving training for my test. So I was like, okay. So I kept going, and I kind of felt like I was getting better. And then it was getting time to the test. And my instructor was like, oh, by the way, so my instructor I thought was a good instructor. He had good structure. He's a very competent driver. He knew a lot about the road, about the test centre. But he had already encouraged me to not do the test in that further away centre. He encouraged me to try and find a cancellation, or to go with a test that he already had secured or something like that. So I got the driving test cancellations at the free one, not the one that you've paid for, and I managed to find a driving test. It wasn't the most convenient time because it was the day that I was supposed to go back to uni and have lectures and stuff, but I just thought, it's fine, I'll miss that day, I'll book the test. So I booked one. So I had my driving test centre, which is apparently like the easiest one around. Like, people come from far distances to come and do their test at this centre because it's got no big roundabouts with multi-lanes. It's only literally, the biggest roundabouts have 2 lanes in them, and that's it. It's got no really fast roads. The fastest road is 50 miles an hour. So like, really, it's quite a good centre. So yeah, I booked that test, and then when it was coming time to the test, I had 2 lessons left, and then I was going to do lots of practice over the weekend and then do the test on the Monday. He texted me on the Wednesday after my lesson and went, listen, I don't think you're ready for the test. I think you should cancel it. I was slightly not happy with it because I thought, I'm quite good, I could pass the test, but thinking about it now, I definitely could not have passed the test, like not a chance. So I was pretty much being quite silly. So I was like, that's fine, but I'm going to finish my block booking. I'm not going to delay it till the summer because I just want to get it over and done with. I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore. Not because he told me I had to cancel the test, but I kind of already felt from the beginning that he had slight tendencies to be slightly impatient, or like, he never shouted, but whenever I made mistakes, it wasn't kind of like, oh, don't worry about it, carry on. It was like, he'd act really shocked and like look at me, and I'm thinking, you're an instructor, you should be used to people making mistakes and having to slam on the brakes. Like, that's why you've got the dual controls. Like, why are you being weird? And also things like wagging his fingers at other road users if they did the wrong thing. And one time, he stuck his middle finger out, and I just thought, I don't want that representing me as a person, because that's not something I would do. I don't want another road user having that done to them on my behalf or anything. And when I told him, like, please don't do that, he was like, I'll do whatever I want. And I was like, cool, well, bye-bye. So after our last lesson together, he was like, well, let me know if you need any more help. And I was like, in my head, I was like, nah. So I went back to uni for 2 months. And I came back in June, and straight away I wanted to get started with lessons, so I started looking around for new instructors. I've heard of the Learner Driving Centre, and I saw, when I had my lessons with the other instructor, I saw a LDC car driving around, so I was looking. I messaged him, I was like, are you available? He was like, no, sorry, I'm not available till July. And I knew that, because I was working in the summer, I just knew that I wanted an instructor that I could have a lesson with, one lesson a week, because I'd had a really unconventional thing where I'd done 24 hours in 4 weeks, so that was 6 hours a week, and normally people have like 2 hours a week or maximum 4 hours a week, or even 1 hour a week sometimes. So I kind of wanted a more conventional thing, move gradually towards test standard rather than do them all at once and feel pressured. So I couldn't get him. I tried to find a female driving instructor as well, if I couldn't have him. So I messaged, and I also wanted a diesel car because I knew that they were slightly easier to start, more difficult to stall. So I was looking around, and I finally found a driving school with a female instructor, but then the female instructor wasn't available when I was, because I was working like full time. I needed weekends. And then she referred me on to a different instructor from her driving school, so I used him, and I completely forgot about the fact that I wanted a female driving instructor in the first place, but I went with him anyway. I booked 10 hours with him straight, and he was a really nice guy. We had a really good conversation, like we had chats and stuff. Then I found that he kind of wasn't pushing me towards independence. He'd happily like use the brakes and the clutch whenever it wasn't that urgent. So like, rather than, if I was going around a bend and I'd slowed down a little bit too much for gear 2 and I needed to go into first gear, rather than say, okay, clutch down, first gear, he'd just do it himself and like start the car again. And I just thought, that's not what I need. I need a guy who's going to be... Oh, by the way, when I cancelled the test in April, I then rebooked for August, because I thought, oh, that'll be plenty of time. I'll have 8 weeks from when I come home from uni to like have lots of lessons, 16 hours, and get the test done. So I'd had a test, so I was working towards a test. I wasn't just working towards perfection and then booking my test, because the waiting times are like ridiculous. So right now, if I were to try and book a test, the earliest is like November, which is September, October, 3 months away. So I just thought, no, I'll book the test at a time that I think will be convenient. I'll book it for a great time, because when I booked it in April, obviously it was like a few months in advance, so there were all the times of the day were available, so I booked one for a good time of day. So I was working towards that, and I didn't feel like he was pushing me towards that. And then at the end of our 10 hours, I felt like on that final lesson, he was like, right, from now on, we're going to kind of work towards more independent driving, you doing everything yourself. And I was like, are you saying that because it's like the final block and I can leave you if I want to, or is that actually what you're going to do? And then he was like, oh, we're going to have to do also 2 hours a week from now on. And I was working full time. I could not do, not 2 hours a week, 2 lessons a week. I could not afford, first of all, the money or the time to do 4 hours a week. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm free on Tuesday, so yeah, we'll book it in. Meanwhile, I'd already phoned up a different instructor, again looking around, finally found a female driving instructor, and booked a lesson with her, and yeah, so after I had my lesson with her on the Monday, and I was supposed to have a lesson on the Tuesday with the instructor that I was just leaving. So on like the Sunday or something, I texted him and I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I can't do the lesson, I need to move house. Which I actually did need to move house. He just didn't know that I wasn't actually free on the day that I said I was free. So yeah, I didn't like message him. I left him basically, got with my other instructor. She had a petrol car and I'd only driven diesel cars this entire time. So I first of all struggled with like the whole like getting moving thing, and also her brakes were super sensitive. I think she said they were like brand new. So literally I'd do this and they'd be like the car would be like jerking and stuff, and I was like, oh my god, I know what I'm doing. But we had that driving lesson. Even that one lesson, she was teaching me stuff that I'd never been taught before, like how to do rolling start. I'd always been taught stop at the give way, look left, look right, look left, and then go. Whereas she was teaching me things like get yourself ready, so as soon as you get to the give way, if it's free, you can then move, which obviously that's what you want to do. But because my instructor had never been moving me towards passing a test and being an independent driver, he kind of didn't ever teach me that, or none of my instructors ever taught me that. So like, even with, and after my first lesson with the woman, she was like, your driving is actually good, you need to do da, 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 da. I think in 10 hours you will be ready. So I was like, wow, like, no one's ever told me that my driving's actually good. Like, what? I'm actually good. My driving's good. I just always thought, I'm a learner. I never really got into the mind frame of, like, I have a test coming up, I'm going to be an independent driver if I pass. Like, even like 2 weeks before the test, it had not sunk in that I had a test, because I was working 9 to 5 all the time. I didn't have time to think about the fact that I had a driving test going on. I was having my lessons on like the Saturday or whenever I had days off in between, and I was never really, I did not have time to focus and think, you have a driving test. So I was never really thought about it that much. So yeah, so I'd have lessons with her, and she'd say things like, oh, you need to get as much practice as possible, so that during our lessons we're not doing so much teaching, but kind of more just you driving and consolidating and kind of getting to do mock tests and stuff. So I was like, okay. But then my dad works really far away from my house, so he leaves the house really early in the morning. He has to wake up very early. He comes home a bit later as well, and he's knackered in the evenings. So I didn't get any practice with him on weekdays, only weekends. So I barely got any practice at all privately. And my mum, she's just basically, she was like, I really don't think I can do it. She was too scared to take me out, which is fair enough. Like, I was scared to take me out. So that was fine. I didn't get any practice. I didn't get much practice at all, but that was obviously worrying. So the whole time when we'd have driving lessons, I was constantly making mistake after mistake after mistake, and she was basically constantly teaching right up until the final lesson. She was telling me, do this, what lane are you supposed to be in, like, oh my gosh, like, it was so terrifying, because I was just like, how the heck am I going to pass a test if I can't even go through 10 minutes of driving with my instructor without having to have her prompt me? I mean, at this point, she wasn't ever having to use, like, her brakes really, maybe once or twice every now and again, but she never had to slam on the brakes. It was kind of, sometimes she had to, like, slow me down a lot more because I was approaching too fast or something like that. So in terms of dangerous driving, I wasn't doing dangerous driving. I could drive, but I just, like, serious faults I was making quite a lot all the time. So it rolled around to the week before my test, and this time I'd stopped my job, and I really had a lot of time to think and get sort of nervous. Again, my dad was working, so I couldn't practice with him. My mum was also working. She does temporary work sometimes, so she was working this week as well. And I was just like, oh my gosh, how am I supposed to practice? I couldn't practice, basically. So it got to my final lesson the day before my driving test, and I hadn't had any practice for like 3 days. I was making mistakes left, right and centre. My instructor's voice must have, like, her throat must have been hurting, because she was constantly having to tell me this, that, and I was just like, oh my gosh. So the night before my test, I finally convinced my dad to come home early, and we went out for a test, and he doesn't work every other Friday anyway, so he wasn't working the next day. So yeah, we went around to practice. We did all the manoeuvres, we practiced. There was one part where I knew that I would have gotten a major if I did that in a test, so that was one serious fault, which, yeah, so that wasn't terrible, I guess. It wasn't a terrible drive, but we practiced all the manoeuvres apart from the parallel park, which is the one that I had not gotten right. Like, I basically was very inconsistent. It was very hit and miss. Like, I'd managed to just about get the reverse around the corner okay. The bay park I could kind of wing, but the reverse park I was constantly going into the curb. Sometimes I was even, like, one time I was literally, like, practically almost still in the middle of the road when I finished the manoeuvre, which is a serious fault if you do that, because it's classed as complete misjudgment. But we didn't practice it. I was like, okay, I was praying, I was like, maybe I won't get it tomorrow, maybe there's a reason why I haven't practiced it tonight. We didn't have the time, it got dark. So we did. So the next morning, it was time for the test, and I, like, could not sleep. I was watching videos about people's driving tests and stuff, which I'd already watched before. I don't know, I kind of did get an alright night's sleep. but then my sister woke me up to say good luck at 6 a.m, so that was the end of that. So from 6 a.m till 9 a.m, when my instructor, 9:15 when my instructor was coming, I was kind of like just chilling. I watched some of the show me tell me questions, got something to eat, had a shower, got ready, all that stuff, and then my instructor came. So like me and my dad like prayed, and then we went out in the car, and it was all going pretty well until I made a mistake at a traffic light. And my instructor, you could tell that she'd already told me that she was a bit nervous anyway. She hadn't got the best night's sleep the night before, which is quite sweet actually, but you could tell that she was having a go at me, but it wasn't like a annoyed, it was more like a, oh my goodness, I'm disappointed, I'm scared, like what's gonna happen if you could make that sort of mistake. So we carried on with the lesson. I kind of got a little bit flustered, stalled a couple times, but still managed to get myself to the driving test centre. We did a parallel park manoeuvre, and it was actually alright. It wasn't perfect, but I got in. I wasn't really close to the curb, but it was okay. She said to me, if this happens in your test, leave it like this, it'll be fine. So I was like, oh, I probably won't get the parallel park anyway. So we drove to the test centre, parked up, did a bay park, had to correct it a tiny bit, but like I said, I could always wing a bay park because you have enough time once you're in the bay to like straighten up before you go back. So did that. And then she was like, oh my goodness, I didn't go over the show me tell me questions, because obviously every car is different, so I didn't know where any of the buttons were for anything. I hadn't opened the bonnet before, but she kind of like showed me this and this, and I was like, okay, like it was all going in my head. And then we went to the bonnet, opened the bonnet, showed me this and this, and obviously like most of the things in the bonnet kind of look similar regardless of what the bonnet, like which car it is. So that was fine. We went to the test centre. I had my my provisional license, got in there, sat down for a second, and then the examiners started coming out. So there was one woman, she came out, she seemed quite happy, she was like, who's this person? The girl was like, that's me. They went, and then another woman came out, and she was like, who's this person? They were like, that's me. And then they went, and then another woman who was slightly more stern came out and was like, who's this person? And another girl was like, that's me. And then they went, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are all women. What? Like, the men must be coming out now. And then if another woman comes out and goes, who's this person? And I was like, that's me. And so I got up. She seemed pretty pleasant. She like had makeup on. She looked really like fashionable and nice. And she had this amazing perfume on, which was like awesome. Just because I just thought, obviously she's like a normal woman who likes to wear perfume and makeup, which is cool. So signed the declaration, asked me like, would you like your instructor in? And I was like, no. Like, why would anyone want their instructor in? I didn't say that to her, obviously. I just said no thanks. And I was just like, I had this smile like plastered on my face. I was like, look confident, don't worry, she doesn't need to know that you don't know what the heck you're doing. So we went out, we did the eyesight task, we went to the car. She asked me the show me tell me questions, and I literally I don't even know if I got them right. Obviously I got them right because she ticked them, but she, like, in terms of the buttons, I said I'd press and this, that and the other, I literally was like kind of just guessing a little bit. And then we went off, so we didn't do the Bay Park, we just left. And as we were driving out of the centre, we had to go left. And it was one of those ones where it was the road kind of split before you then turn. So if you were going left, you went this way. If you were going right, you went that way. So I was heading towards the one for going right, even though my indicator said left. And then literally at the last second, I realised, and I went, oof, I went that way. Luckily, there was no one around or anything. So, but at that point, I thought, I've already failed this. But we kept going. And there were bits here and there where I felt like, oh, I'd made a mistake. I've braked too harshly. I braked a bit harshly, many times. Clutch was like blah. It was all over. I felt like it was a bit all over the place. But luckily, we went on really easy roads. We did some right turning at traffic lights and stuff, which I always get nervous for those, especially when it's offside to offside, which you kind of have to I always get a bit nervous for those. And then one particular one, she was like, the traffic light's facing the other way, so I'm going to help you out here. So I was like, okay, I didn't know what the heck she even meant. But what she meant was that the traffic light that tells me when it's gone red is facing the other way, so I can't, like, we couldn't see like when it went red or not, because obviously when it goes yellow is when you then start to go. So she was like, okay, it's changing now. So I was like, okay, and I moved, and I thought I kind of hesitated a little bit there, but I went, and then we did the that was part of the independent drive actually. Oh yeah, way before this, I did my new manoeuvre, and she told me pull up, but not too close to that car. And I was like, oh, this means I'm doing the parallel park. So she was like, in a minute, you're gonna do the pull up alongside that car and park behind it within 2 car lengths. Blah 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 blah. And I was like, okay, like pretending I knew exactly what I was doing. So I went and did it, and can you believe it? I did it absolutely perfectly. I was like really close to the curb, like all my observations, stopped when I needed to, didn't like lose control or roll back or anything. Like, it was perfect, and I even had time to then reverse back straight afterwards, because usually I'm correcting it right till the very end, but this time I finished it and then just moved back straight, and I was like, yes. And she was like, okay, move on. So we kept going, and at one point as well, there was a road which there's a road around there which is like 20 miles an hour, and I was like, is it this road? I can't tell. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna go 20 miles an hour, because I'd rather do that than go 30 when it's a 20, because obviously that's probably more serious than the other way around. So I was going 20, and I kind of didn't really know what to do. We were just going along, and then she's like, okay, turn left here, and I turned left, and we went back to the test centre. Just as we were about to reach the test centre, there was like a road, it was quite narrow, and there was like oncoming traffic. They'd let me go. I think they could tell I was on a test, maybe. So I was going, and then as I went, because the oncoming traffic had been waiting for me, there was a car kind of blocking the road for me to enter. This was the same road that I had like zoomed out of as coming out of the test centre. So she was like, okay, turn right here, you can use either of these 2 roads. So I could have used the correct one, or the other one, which is for the other direction coming in. And I thought she was trying to trick me. I thought she was trying to say, like, you need to make the decision of which one is the correct one to use. And I was like, well, obviously it's this one. But she was actually just trying to help me out and saying, because I know it's a bit busy here, you can go that other way if you want. But I was like, nope, I'm going to go this way. And even because that one was blocking me, I had to go around a little bit, and literally climbed onto the pavement as I was like driving in. And I was like, oh, I literally said, oh my gosh. I looked at her and I was like, oh my gosh, and she looked a little bit disappointed, but I don't know. So I was like, sorry, what were the directions again? And she was like, turn right into the centre. And I looked to the right, and the centre was literally there, and I was like, oh, okay. So then I drove in. I was like, how did I fail this? Right, like, if I hadn't failed it before already, how was it that right by the centre I failed this test? Like, what the heck? So I drove into the centre. She was like, drive right by that bin and park. And I was like, which bin? And she was like, that bin right in front of us. And I was like, oh, okay. And then I saw my driving instructor standing at the door of the test centre, and I shook my head at her, and I was like, no, I failed it. And then we went up, and she was like, okay, that's the end of your test. So I literally thought she was about to say, sorry, you failed your test. So I was like, then she was like, she stopped for a minute, like looked around and went, I'm pleased to say you've passed your test. And I was like, shut up, are you joking? Literally like that. She was like, she didn't look very happy at all. She was like, we don't joke here. And I was like, okay. So then I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I passed. I was like, I think I'm gonna cry. And so then she then looked at like the green piece of paper, the report, and she like totted up everything, and then she was like, oh, just gonna give you some feedback, call your instructor over. My instructor, at this point, she'd already kind of come close to the car when she saw that I passed, and she was like, it was an alright drive. Were you nervous on the way back to the centre? Because you made quite a few mistakes there. You were hesitating, and there were some problems with progress. There was one road in particular where you were going so slowly, like we really weren't making progress at all. And I was thinking, at the time I didn't really remember it, but then now I obviously remember that it was the road where I didn't realise whether it was 20 or 30. And then she gave me the report. I got 8 minors, which isn't like the best drive ever, but I was happy as Larry. I was happier than Larry, in fact. So yeah, it was, all my minors were 1-4 gears. So at one point I put it in 5th by accident when I was trying to put it in 3rd. So then I put it in 3rd. By that time I'd slowed down enough that I needed to be in 2nd, so then I had to move it. And I saw her write something down immediately, so I already knew that that was a mistake. There was one for foot brake, which I'm surprised about, because I'm pretty sure there could have been 3 or 4 places where she could have given me a minor for the foot brake, but I just imagine it was for like jamming the brakes, slamming the brakes too hard. One was for steering, which I wasn't sure where. I think there's a point where I think I saw her putting a minor down when I turned into a road, but I wasn't quite sure why. There was one for safety, moving off. So at one point when I was moving off, she had asked me to pull over and she wanted me to move off again, and I looked around, and in my back mirrors I saw there was a car coming, but I thought it was far enough away that I could pull off safely. But then by the time I did my like final check, I saw that it was pretty close and I couldn't make it, so I had to like turn off my indicator, and then obviously I think she gave me a minor for that, but it's fine because I hadn't pulled off yet, so it was just a minor. I got 1 for progress on the road where I thought it might have been 20, 2 for hesitation. One was because there was a bus, a double-decker bus. There was enough room for me to go round it, but I just stopped behind it because I felt like I was a bit too nervous. If I tried to do it, I probably would have made a mistake, so I just said I'd stop here. And other cars behind me were actually going around me, but yeah, so that was a hesitation. And then another one at a roundabout where I wasn't sure whether I should go or not, so I missed my chance. Another one for driving position, for positioning for normal driving. I'm not sure. I think there was a part where I was supposed to turn right, where I was positioned over to the left and not over to the right, so that might have been it. So yeah, 8 faults in total, 0 major errors, 0 serious or dangerous. I was super happy. I went over, I drove home, and as we were driving home, my instructor actually stalled the car, but like she was obviously a professional and just moved off straight away, and she was like, yeah, everyone stalls, it's just what you do after you stall. And I was like, yeah, okay. But yeah, no, she's a good driver. And yeah, so now it's literally just about getting a car, and I don't know if I can afford it, but I'm gonna try my darndest to save up as much as I can, get a job before I go back to uni, hopefully. And yeah, but yeah, hopefully I'll have a car tour very soon, and fingers crossed. But yeah, other than that, thank you so much for watching this. If you have any questions at all, ask me in the description box. I hope you found my driving experience and driving test experience interesting. Like I said, everyone's is different. I'm pretty sure mine is probably not the same as like anybody else's you've ever heard, or even if it's similar. But yeah, no, don't forget to like or subscribe or whatever, or give any suggestions for any other videos. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. See you later.